Everybody. I'm Caleb Minthorn, the Air Quality Technician for the CTUIR Energy and Sciences Department, and I'll go over just a little bit of about our program. There's obviously a lot of moving parts. You'll hear that probably a few times today. But anyway, like I said, I'll go through the program and hit on a few bullets on each of the slides. But a lot of this we can have some discussion later on. So without any more hesitation, we'll go ahead and kick it off here. All right, the outline itself here, I'll just kind of let you guys breeze through it. I won't read all of these, but I'll probably pick one or two and just kind of touch on them. So obviously, why is air important? All these um, that you see below, they're all just as important as each other, and I don't want to try and rank any one of them any more than each other because they all equally play into why air is important and strategies for prevention and mitigation. That's kind of the overarching umbrella over all of these. If we were to talk about cleaning up the air, totally, there's a ton of strategies for doing it. And so here in the picture here, this you'll see a nice, beautiful, sunny day with a little bit of clouds. That's like, obviously a nice spring day, and what a better way to kick off, than to have a nice day out today too. So we can move to the next slide, and then I'll really dive in. Okay, why is air important? Okay, so without diving into all of these, I'll just jump right to D, complications with chronic health issues. And I'll do my best to keep this linked to climate adaptation and air quality. Kind of they go hand in hand. So complications with chronic health issues can be exacerbated as climate change moves forward into the future, which we're already in. And if you look over to the right there in that picture, this is one of the best examples of why air quality is important. And you can see that grain of sand. It's 90 microns, and the that hair over to the right. That's I might have that wrong. 90, I think it's 90 microns, but the hair itself is 10 microns. And you can see the end of the hair. Like if you were to look at your hair, you could see the end of it. That's how big dust particles actually are. And the little red dots that you see there, PM 2.5, we can't see those. And as Colleen said, there's things that are unseen that cause poor air quality. And PM 2.5 it's essentially invisible. And what it is, it's a combination of dust, smoke, and water droplets. And so those are small enough to pass through your blood lining in your lungs, as to where the grain of sand there and dust and like cat hair and whatnot, we can cough out. So that's the danger with climate change advancing. There's going to be more PM 2.5 in the air as we have drier conditions. It tends to like drier conditions to vaporize and float around. And so I'll move on to the air quality colors and what they mean and why that ties into D there. The air quality colors, they are a part of the Air Now flag program, and it was developed by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, who I work with, even though I am the CTUIR Air Tech. I report to the EPA. And so they came up with a program called the Air Quality Flag Program, and they developed the color system to rate the air quality from good to very unhealthy. And as you remember, last September, I started sending out emails, and some of them had these colors on them. And it's just a good way of letting the general public know that the air is, it's green, which is good, yellow, moderate, unhealthy to very unhealthy. And so that's just kind of a good little public education tool to let everybody know that the air, it's not too good today. So I'll move on to the next slide because there's I can tie more of this back to it. This is the seasonal hazards and climate change round, and I won't dive too much into it. But as you can see, if you go from right to left on the round, it's actually within sync of the seasons, and each one of those has an air quality hazard or emission or an event that is tied to the seasons. And so if we're having longer summers, that means we're probably going to have more dust in the air and clearly more smoke. And so we can jump to the next slide, and I'll keep tying these back as much as possible. Allergens. Earlier, Althea had mentioned allergens as being, something that definitely causes us to, have more, kind of more crappy days, especially if you are allergic to things like pollen and or, um, worse things, out there. Like even cat hair. People are allergic to cat hair, but with allergens, if we have longer instances where there's more CO2 in the air, that could cause certain plants to produce more pollen spores, and send them out for longer during the springtime. And the bad thing, I'm totally going to come out of left field here with like if we don't have bees to pollinate these plants, you know, will they, what's going to happen to it, so is it just going to keep on spitting off pollen? So a couple years ago, I started posting the pollen index on my emails, and it tends to be uh, very helpful to people who may glance at it. And so without going too far off the rails on allergens, we can go to the next slide. Okay. Althea had mentioned that we live in an agricultural area. We live in a rather large agricultural area outside of even just Oregon. And so, as you can see in the picture there, that airplane, they're crop spraying for various pesticides and herbicides. And then, as you see down in the other photo, that combine is harvesting wheat, and there's all kinds of dust coming off of that. And so, that the bullet that says higher seasonal temperatures create more chances for volatilization. Um, as I mentioned earlier, PM 2.5, it actually likes it when it's hotter out. And so on hot days, more likely going to see more of these emissions just kind of hanging out if it's hot out, because on colder days, these emissions, they're heavier, so they weigh down and fall into the earth faster. So if climate change continues on the same path, or the way it is, these agricultural activities are going to exacerbate our chances for living, healthier days. If they're spraying what they're spraying, constantly, they're not always spraying the stuff, and it's not always harvest time. But when it is, it's typically on warm days or summer days. So without getting too ahead of myself, I'll tie into why that's important here on the next few slides. Okay, drought and dust. These are extremely important because without moisture in the air, you can see that dust is coming off that field that's being plowed, and then the example below, you can see the cracks in the earth. That's very bad because our soil obviously holds nutrients, and it holds moisture. It holds moisture. So during a drought period, the ground actually starts to release moisture slowly throughout the year. And even right now, we had a big snow a couple weeks ago. The ground is already starting to dry up a little bit, and roads are becoming dusty, just like that photo. So that's why drought and dust are very important topics to throw into the ring when talking about air quality and climate change, and ultimately public health. So I wish I could get more into that, but Sadell did a great job talking about the public health impacts and community fallout from events like things that are going on, just like in this photo. It may seem somewhat innocent, but you got to multiply that tractor times 500 fields, across the county or eastern Washington and Idaho and Oregon. It starts to add up, all that dust. Um, so I would like to talk about this one more, but I'll keep on. I'll get way out of context. So if we could go to the next one, awesome. Okay, so heat and ozone. This is where things really start to like heat up. I mean, no pun intended, but I'll just jump right to the bottom. Ozone is the most unhealthy on hot days, and ozone is created through a process called photovoltaic reaction, and the chemicals in the air, they will collide with ultraviolet rays of the sun and just regular just regular air molecules. And what happens is the single carbon monoxide molecules will combine with oxygen. And the reason there's single carbon atoms just floating around is because it gets so hot in certain areas that when there's chemicals in the air, they interact with oxygen, and sometimes a single carbon atom will bust off. So that single carbon atom will form with regular oxygen, forming ozone. So ozone is pretty bad. We all kind of remember it from the 80s and 90s, but it can be much worse depending on where you live. So it can cause mostly respiratory issues, but it can kill. So like as you can see in the photo, those stacks, whatever they're creating, they're not producing ozone like on purpose, but they're adding to the precursor chemicals that ultimately do make ozone. So one good thing is that we don't have leaded gas anymore, and that's one thing that our program does is we just try and educate the public about why ozone is still around. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, wildfire smoke. Okay. So as you can see in the picture here, it's it's pretty bad. You can't hardly see the horizon very far. The top left photo, that visibility is like less than a mile, and yeah, that's pretty bad. Um, so fire season in summer and fall months, due to the advancing stages of, I would say the stages that we're in of climate change, it is producing longer summer and a longer and well, summer is kind of happening earlier and it's extending a little bit later, and the temperatures we're starting to see 70 high 70s early 80s or low 80s in the springtime, where we used to be in the 60s 60s to 70s. So it's kind of making things a little bit warmer, and then like the slides before, the drought, that definitely isn't helping. So we're seeing smoke come in a little bit earlier now, and that's just due to there being more fuel, and ultimately um, tourism. It's we live in a tourism area, so there is a lot of people around, but um, there's a lot of reasons to blame on just the environment around us changing. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, indoor mold. This topic itself, it's as you can see in that flood photo, um, that water is pretty high, and the around the base of that building, there's probably going to be mold forming on those forming on the inside, even though it might be dry. like it looks like it's probably dry, kind of, but anyway, due to rising waters, we're seeing more flooding, and it's across the world. It's not just it's not just here. And the reason that flooding has an impact on air quality is because it leaves mold behind in certain places, and mold is rather intrusive. It will find the opportunistic place to feed and make a home, just like the that vent above. And just proper maintenance sometimes can be the best strategy. And so this could be a whole presentation itself, but I want to save time for everyone else. Next slide, please. Okay. All right, grid failure. So we all saw that Texas lost power a few weeks ago, about a month ago. And what happened was people had never experienced those kind of temperatures before. And so those that had wood stoves started to, burn wood inside them, not realizing that some of those stoves were far too old or they weren't EPA approved. And ultimately, some people were probably just throwing in wood from their backyard or wood from wherever they could find it. It may not have been dry. It may have been press board with chemicals to preserve it. Who knows? But anyway, that the bullet here: inefficient wood stoves can create indoor particle pollution. It's very risky when you have a stove like that. That's not that doesn't have a flue that lets all the gases escape. And so the particle pollution can actually go reverse back into your house via a backdraft, and that's it. It just depends on how old the home is. And Texas, gets very high winds. So if somebody were to have been, burning poorly lit fire inside that stove there, it could possibly backdraft into the living room. So that's one bad thing about grid failure is it causes people to make desperate decisions, and it's not their fault. A lot of those people were just trying to stay warm. So grid failure due to climate change events, it's definitely becoming more likely. Okay, and strategies for prevention and mitigation. I talked about that at the beginning, and there's tons of strategies, prevention and mitigation, but one effective way that we on the tribal air level can implement this is just by providing outreach on how to use the air filter or the air filters, HVAC systems, and the PPE, the personal protective equipment. If you can see in the photo there, those two different kinds of masks are both very highly rated for keeping PM 2.5 out. And the important thing to remember is that you don't want too much restrictive airflow, because an average healthy human adult needs to breathe 16.67 liters of air per minute. And when you start to compromise that, it could make you feel crappy. So that's the thing with masks is you got to have the right one and wear it properly. And if you're already suffering, it's probably not the best option, but that's why we're here to have this discussion. And air filters, air filters can play a huge part in keeping your home clean from smoke. And this could be a whole nother topic itself, just doing the DIY fans at home to keep PM 2.5 levels low during a smoke event. So aside from that, having a good HVAC system that's cleaned and maintained properly, that's going to help during an event also, because HVACs, they breathe the same way. So if you don't have it all cleaned out, you're probably not going to get too clean of air during an event, especially if it's hot out. That's why it's important, because during a climate change event, it's going to be hot and smoky. So, we have to try our best to stay ahead of things. So, next slide, please. That's my phone number right there, and my email. If anybody has any questions about the burn permit program, you can always email me. And I just want to drop an introduction for Matthew Campbell. He's our new air modeling lead. We'll get him on at some point later on. Any questions or comments?
Thanks, Caleb. That was really awesome.